Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and I like to do fashion DIYs. And in today's video, I am taking things that I have stolen from my dad's closet and I'm going to try to rework them into something, I don't know, trendy, cute. So wish me luck. We'll see how this goes. So in the first lockdown, obviously thrift stores were closed, so I ended up rummaging through my dad's closet and pulled a couple things that I could potentially rework. So although this is technically sponsored by my father's closet, you can probably just use whatever you have on hand at home, since this is essentially just a t-shirt and a long sleeve shirt. For the first tutorial, I am working with this basic cotton black long sleeve shirt. Since this has my dad's company's logo on it, I had to create something that would work around that. To work around the logo, I am going to use my tracing paper to create the shape I am looking for, and I figured the best way to do this was to work on the fold line. So on my tracing paper, I drew out a fold line and folded my shirt in half and lined up the line on the tracing paper with the fold on the shirt. Then I marked out the shoulder and side seam before drawing out my new neckline. I also made sure that I mark my hem allowance. Then I cleaned up my pattern piece before cutting it out. I then repeated the same steps to create a back pattern piece using my front pattern piece as a guide at the side seams. To cut my pieces out, I folded my shirt with the side seams together, using pins to help it lay flat. Folding it this way allows there to be a fold line in the center front and the center back, so I can easily line up my pattern pieces. I started with the front piece and carefully cut to the side seam before flipping it over and repeating the same steps to the back pattern piece. Okay, so first things first is I am just going to hem this top. But before I go in and do that, I am going to serge this raw edge, and then I am going to just do a single folded hem. Serging is not mandatory. You could always just use a zigzag stitch or just do a double folded hem if you want to have a really clean inside look, but obviously I have a serger, so why not use it? Okay, so with my edges serged, I am going to flip it inside out and begin pinning for my hem. So now that my top is done, I'm going to be moving on to the shorts. For the remaining fabric, I am going to create a pair of matching shorts. To do that, I am going to create the pattern from an existing pair of shorts by folding them in half and tracing them out onto tracing paper. Then I folded them the other way and traced out the back piece. I cleaned up my lines and added my seam allowances before cutting out my pieces. I also decided that I wanted my shorts to have pockets, so I grabbed a piece of scrap paper and roughly traced out my hand. Then I strategically cut down the pattern pieces. I didn't have that much space, so I had to get creative with cutting my pieces. I ended up seam ripping my side seams to give me a ½ inch more space before pinning down my pieces and cutting them out. Unfortunately, I ran out of this fabric for the pockets, so I ended up using just some other scrap black fabric I had laying around. In total, I cut out 4 pocket pieces. To start the sewing process, I sewed the center front and center backs together. I am going to map out the placement of the waistband so I can see where I need to put my pockets. Then I pinned one pocket piece right below that mark and sewed it in place, and repeated the same process to all 4 sides. Then I cut little slits on either side of the pocket to the seam allowance and pressed all the seams open. This allows the pocket to lay flat. Then I lined up my front and back pieces together and pinned before sewing all the way around, including the pockets. Once that was complete, I sewed the seam in between the legs closed. Then I moved on to the waistband. I marked 3 inches below the waistband with chalk and then folded the waistband over to meet the chalk line. Make sure your shorts are inside out, so you are doing this on the inside. I then sewed around the waistband, leaving a 3-inch gap to thread my elastic through. To measure my elastic, I wrapped it around my waist and marked with chalk where the 2 ends meet and added an extra inch of seam allowance. I took one end and safety pinned it to the waistband of the shorts. With the safety pin pinned in the other end, I started to feed it through the tunnel. Then sewed the ends of the elastic together and sewed up the hole to conceal the elastic. The last and final step for these shorts was to complete the hem. I just trimmed the hem to even it out and pinned a 1/2 inch before sewing, and this little set is done. Okay, so now I'm moving on to my second project, which is honestly just a t-shirt that I'll be recreating. This is a little bit nicer of a t-shirt because it's ribbed and a little bit thicker. Unfortunately, my dad is a size small, which means it doesn't give me a lot of wiggle room to work with. And this dress that I have in mind is going to be a little too short. So I'm going to have to think of some sort of workaround to elongate it. I'm gonna try to get away with not hemming the dress and just using the existing hemline. This is kind of like a little trick or hack that I tend to do when I am reworking a project. I always try to keep the original hem if I can. It just saves a step, and also sometimes I really like that authentic look, especially when I work with denim. So before I can get started on cutting this bad boy up, I am going to, of course, draft a pattern. And to do that, I'm going to be using a fitted dress that I already own to replicate the pattern, and then I'm gonna rework it from there to make my dress. I am taking this fitted dress from my closet and tracing it out onto a piece of tracing paper and use it as a template to draw out the design I am looking for. I wanted a one-shoulder dress with a ruche cutout on the opposite side. Once I had the design I was going for, I added my seam allowances. Since the shirt is too small, I needed to elongate the dress, and I'm going to separate the pattern here and cut the shoulder piece out separately. I retraced this piece so I could add back the seam allowance that I lost cutting out the other side. Luckily, my pattern pieces are the same for both sides, front and back, so I just laid my t-shirt out flat and pinned my dress pattern piece to it. As you can see, I ran out of room, so some of the pattern piece is going over the shoulder seam, so I just cut it out anyways. Then I cut out my little shoulder strap from the fabric and cut the sleeves. Okay, so it's the next day. I had to call it quits last night because it was like 2 a.m. and that is when I start making mistakes. So quit while you're ahead. But I think I may have not quit soon enough because I think I have to already make alterations and I haven't even started the sewing process. But let's get into this dress. Okay, so I went ahead and already serged all the edges of my dress, and just by looking at it, like holding it up, I'm like putting it against my body and I'm like, I don't think this is wide enough yet for the ruching effect that I'm looking for. So I'm going to feel it out, and I may have to kind of rummage for some more scrap fabric to widen it a bit. And it's also pretty short, I think, but luckily I'm short, so hopefully it will be okay. See how this goes. So first things first, I'm going to attach the shoulder to the body of the dress. I purposely matched the right side of the dress to the wrong side of the shoulder strap so I could give the dress some added interest because the fabrics do look slightly different in person. And I did the same to the back pieces. So I've now sewn my shoulder strap. This would technically be the front. I know I'm in like a bulky sweater right now, but if I kind of like place it out, I really don't think I'm gonna have the room that I want. I don't think I'm going to alter the one side, the side seam without the cutout. I think I'm gonna leave that as is so then it lines up with the shoulder the way I want it to. I'm just going to add fabric to this side with the cutout. So since that is what I've decided as of now, I'm going to go ahead and sew with right sides together the one side that I want to be connected. And then I will resize from there.
Then I pinned the shoulders together before sewing.
Okay, so I just pinned the dress to my dress form to try to get an idea of how much work I have ahead of me. And I'm not gonna lie, she looks lost. I have a lot of work to do, it seems. I'm a little intimidated because it doesn't seem like it's working out at this point, but I mean, I've got nothing to lose, so I'm just gonna keep going. But let me show you what I'm working with. Okay, this is the rough outline of the front, not the cutest. And then this is supposed to be the cutout on the side where I'm most likely going, well, I am gonna be adding more fabric, and then the back. So it's coming together slowly. Obviously, I haven't done any of the hems yet, and I need to add more fabric to the sides. So as you can see, she is a long ways from being finished, but this is the process. It's very trial and error, and there have been many projects that I've just completely scrapped. This might be one of them. I hope it's not, but yeah, it's kind of just fun figuring it out, and if it doesn't work out, I just cut up and lost an old t-shirt, whatever, not a big deal. But if it does turn out, it's like a really cool thing to say you've made your own clothes. Another thing I should mention about this is that the mannequin, even though it's adjustable, it's already bigger than my size. So it's kind of hard for me to get the best idea of how much I need to add or how it's gonna lay on my body. So I kind of just have to eyeball it and hope for the best. I mean, I guess I could measure, but yeah, I should probably measure.
To add in the extra fabric I needed, I ended up using the side seams that I cut out earlier. And I really kind of just eyeballed how much I wanted to add, but I believe in total it was around 4 inches. And I also cut out the longer piece for the bottom half. Then I pinned these new side panels into place and sewed on both sides.
So originally, to create the tunnel to put the draw cord in the hole, in the cutout, I was just gonna actually like fold it down and create a tunnel by making a hem. But once I've tried it on, if I do that, I'm gonna be losing too much fabric and I feel it a little bit too revealing. And also because I want to maximize how much fabric I have, I'm actually going to take another old t-shirt of my father's, and I'm going to use this as the casing on the inside for the tunnel. So this is going to help clean up my edges and also act as a tunnel. So let's try to figure it out, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm confused, but one step at a time.
To cut out the shape I need for my t-shirt, I decided to do everything on the fold to make things easier for myself. I folded my dress in half as well as my t-shirt fabric and lined everything up. I then grabbed my pencil and began to trace out my cutout as well as mark the top of the dress. And once I had drawn out my piece, I cut it out and I had something that looked like this. The next step is to pin that into place with right sides together before sewing. To finish off the casing, I flipped the unfinished edge to the inside and pinned it flat into place, sewing as close as I could to the outside edge. Then I just needed to sew a straight line to divide the top into 2 tunnels.
So I just stitched in the tunnel that I'm going to be using for my draw cord. Honestly, the dress itself is kind of done, minus the draw cord that I'm gonna make. Still very unsure how it's going to fit, but I'm hoping the draw cord is going to give me some leeway in sizing so I can kind of adjust it a bit, and it's also gonna act like a strap so I can tie it and adjust it as needed. But I don't think it's gonna give me the ruching effect that I'm looking for. But we shall find out.
So I ended up making multiple 1.5-inch strips and sewing them together because it wouldn't be long enough otherwise. Once it was one long continuous piece, I folded with right sides together and ran it through my serger. And I then used my loop turner to turn it right side out. I then inserted a safety pin to one end of the draw cord and started to feed it through my tunnel.
Okay, so once I put my strap through my tunnel, it was time for a fit test, which is always honestly like the moment of truth. Is this gonna work? Is it not gonna work? So I put it on, and honestly, the dress is pretty cute. There are a few minor adjustments that I have to do. Like on the side here, I just marked with a pin where I'm gonna need to take it in a bit. So I'm gonna have to kind of go in and reconstruct to honestly take out quite a bit. So I might just even take out the panel that I had originally added in, just because I don't really have much of a bust. So I guess adding that was kind of unnecessary. But that's okay, easy fix. And I also marked with a pin just on the side here, which is on the hip. It kind of laid a little bit off, so I just marked it so I can go back into it afterwards and just see what I can do to smooth it out. So those are the corrections I'm going to make, but I'm gonna do those off camera because those are not very fun just to watch my seam rip. And yeah, and the next time you see me, it'll be in the final dress. And that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you would like to see more fashion DIY videos, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Also, from my last video, which was the fleece bucket hat and the matching mask set, I am going to probably be making some. So if you're interested in purchasing one, I'm going to be doing it all through my Instagram, and I'll have all the information linked in my highlights. So if you want to check that out, I will leave it linked below for you. And I think that's everything. I will see you in the next one. Bye.